My name is Thomas Clark, and I've been an investigative journalist for over 15 years. What I'm about to share with you haunts me every night when I close my eyes. Believe me, I've covered hundreds of disturbing cases in my career, but nothing compares to what I uncovered about the A74 highway. This road isn't just a link between Glasgow and Carlisle. It's a graveyard without tombstones, a place where people simply vanish. I first heard about the disappearances in November 2017 on a particularly cold night in Glasgow. I was working on a story about human trafficking when a retired cop, too drunk to keep secrets, mentioned something about the A74 pattern, sex workers vanishing from truck stops along the highway, always on nights of heavy rain. The next morning, I started digging. Police records showed at least 17 women missing between 2010 and 2015, all fitting the same profile. Sex workers, mostly between 25 and 35 years old, last seen near the A74. The most chilling part? Not one of these cases was solved. Not a single body was found. That's how I ended up at the Carter family's doorstep, a modest house in the Glasgow suburbs. Sarah Carter greeted me with hollow eyes, the kind that haven't known proper sleep in years. Her sister, Evelyn, was one of the missing women. Evelyn was never a saint, Sarah told me, as she poured tea that went cold, untouched. But she was my sister, you know. She deserved more than being forgotten in some dusty police file. Evelyn Carter, 29, mother to a 7-year-old boy, vanished on October 12, 2013. It was a night like the one we were talking through. Torrential, rain pounding the windows like impatient fingers. She called me at 11:47 p.m., Sarah said, glancing at a worn notebook where she jotted down every detail. She was at a truck stop near mile marker 43 on the A74. She'd just finished with a client and was waiting for the next bus back to the city. That bus never came, or at least she never got on it. Sarah's voice trembled as she showed me Evelyn's last photo. Vibrant red hair, a shy smile, a bird tattoo on her neck. The police barely looked into it, she continued. They said women like Evelyn often choose to disappear, to start a new life. But she'd never abandon her son. Never. What Sarah told me next sent ice through my vein. 3 days after Evelyn vanished, she started getting strange calls in the middle of the night. When she answered, all she heard was the sound of rain and faintly in the background, what sounded like her sister's voice calling for help. The police said it was a prank, or my imagination. They traced the calls, said they came from payphones along the A74. But when they sent patrol cars to check, they never found anyone. The calls went on for 6 weeks, then stopped abruptly. As I left the Carter's house that afternoon, something gnawed at me. Sarah had mentioned in passing that the night Evelyn disappeared was marked by a severe storm that caused flooding in the area. I started cross-referencing weather reports for the other disappearance. The pattern was undeniable. Every woman vanished on a night of heavy rain. I decided to follow this lead. Over the next few days, I combed through police reports and talked to families of other missing. One name kept coming up. A truck stop called Highland Rest, located at mile marker 43 on the A74. At least 7 of the 17 women were last seen. That's where I headed on a grey December afternoon. A light rain was starting to fall, and a chill that had nothing to do with the cold ran down my spine as I parked my car. Highland Rest was a grim place, even in day. A gas station with an attached diner, 2 weathered outdoor bathrooms, and a small area for truckers to. It was all framed by the dense forest lining much of the A70. As I stepped into the diner, I noticed a security camera pointed at the parking lot. It was worn and caked with grime, looking more like a decoration than a functioning device. The counter clerk, a man in his 60s named Doug, poured me coffee while I asked casual questions about the... "I've worked here 15 years, he said, wiping the counter with a rag as old as he looked. "See all sorts at night." When I brought up the disappearances, Doug grew visibly uneasy. His eyes flicked to the window, as if checking if someone might open. "Lots of folks talk about it, but no one does anything," he muttered. "You should talk to Malcolm. He saw something the night that Redhead went." The rain was relentless as I drove to meet Malcolm Peterson. The windshield wipers could barely keep up with the downpour, and the road ahead morphed into a dark tunnel. I thought about the missing women, how their final hours were spent under this same unforgiving sky. The nursing home where Malcolm now lived was off the main highway, a converted Victorian building with weathered brick walls and windows like tired eyes watching the landscape. I arrived soaked, and the receptionist hesitated before leading me to Malcolm's room. "He has good days and bad days," she said, lowering her voice. "Today seems like a good one, but don't upset him too much. Anything about the highway gets him agitated." Malcolm sat by the window, staring at the rain, a man in his early 70s, with large wrinkled hands that looked like maps of every road he'd ever driven. When he saw me, his eyes lit up with recognition, though we'd never met. "You're the journalist," he said, not as a question. "Doug said someone would come. Someone always does, after it rains like this." I sat beside him, turning on my recorder with his permission. Malcolm eyed the small device like it was an alien object. "I'll tell you what I saw that night," he began, his voice rough as gravel on asphalt. "But you won't believe me. No one does. Not even the cops." It was October 2013, and Malcolm was driving his truck along the A74, hauling auto parts to Glasgow. The rain fell in thick sheets, visibility near zero. He pulled into Highland Rest to wait out the storm. It was past midnight. I was in the cab, trying to sleep, when I saw her, the red-headed girl. She was under the gas station's awning, smoking a cigarette soaked to the bone. Looked nervous, kept glancing at the road. Malcolm described Evelyn Carter with unsettling precision. The worn leather jacket, knee-high boots, the way she twirled her hair while waiting. Details that confirmed he'd truly seen her that fateful night. "I should have offered her a ride to town," his voice cracked. "But you know how it is. We don't want trouble. Not after what happened to Jimmy Larson." Jimmy Larson was a trucker falsely accused years earlier of kidnapping a young woman. Though cleared, the incident sparked distrust among drivers in the area. "So, I just watched," Malcolm went on. "Saw when that black car pulled up. An old sedan, 90s in model, but well kept. Tinted windows. Couldn't see the plate through the rain." Malcolm said Evelyn spoke briefly with the driver, then got... "It seemed routine. Just another sex worker doing her job. It was the man who bothered me." Malcolm leaned forward, lowering his voice as if afraid of being overheard. When he stepped out to open her door, I caught a glimpse of him under the station's light. Tall, thin, wearing a hat that hid part of his face. But that's not what scared. He paused, his eyes fixed on the rain outside. It was how he moved, unnatural, you know, like every step was rehearsed, and there was something about his eyes when the light hit them, empty, like a doll's. Malcolm said he felt something was... A primal sense of danger made him grab his flashlight and jot down what he could of the car's... They pulled out of the lot, and instead of staying on the A74, the car turned onto a dirt road. You could barely see. That struck me as odd. No one uses that road, especially on a night like that. Driven by an impulse he still doesn't understand, Malcolm started his truck and followed the car. The rain turned the dirt road to mud, and his heavy rig struggled to keep. I followed for about 2 miles. The road twisted through the forest, getting narrower. Then suddenly the car just vanished. Malcolm stopped the truck and shone his flashlight through the rain. There was no sign of the black sedan. I was about to turn back when I saw something off the side of the road. A faint trail, almost hidden among the trees, and hanging from a low branch, a scrap of red fabric. He got out of the truck, heart racing, rain hammering his shoulders. With the flashlight shaking in his hand, he followed the trail a few yards. That's when I heard it. Malcolm swallowed hard, his trembling hand gripping the arm of his chair. A scream, muffled. Sarah Carter's trembling voice drew me straight to her house. When I arrived, the storm had worsened, turning the streets into shallow rivers. Sarah was waiting at the door, her face pale as paper. Without a word, she led me to the living room, where an old iPhone was plugged into a laptop. I found this in a box of Evelyn's belongings the police returned, she explained, her hands shaking as she handled the device. The battery's been dead for years. I only managed to charge it today and found voice recordings she made the night she disappeared. Sarah hit play, and Evelyn Carter's voice filled the room. A chill ran through me as a woman reduced to photos and reports finally spoke. It's Thursday, October 12th, 11:15 p.m. The recording began. Heavy rain in the background. I'm at Highland Rest, waiting for the 11:40 bus to Glasgow. Just finished with a client and... Wait, there's a car pulling up. A pause. Then Evelyn continued, her voice quieter. It's a black sedan. The driver's waving at me. Think he's a potential client. Another pause. The rain grew muffled, as if she'd slipped the phone into her pocket while approaching the car. Good evening. Evelyn's voice was polite, professional. Looking for company. The reply was almost inaudible. A male voice, calm and eerily monotone. I couldn't make out the exact words, but the tone was unnervingly courteous. The recording captured snippets of their negotiation. Evelyn mentioned her rates, the man responded, and then, get in the car? I don't usually do that. Evelyn hesitated. Where would we go? Another reply from the man, too faint to decipher. Well, it's pouring. Evelyn seemed to reconsider. If it's close and quick, all right, I'll go with you. The next sounds were a car door opening and closing, followed by the engine. Start. The recording continued, likely with the phone still in Evelyn's pocket, picking up muffled sounds of rain, the engine, and the occasional shift of tires on the road. After about 3 minutes, Evelyn's voice returned. Wait, this isn't the main road. Where are we going? The man said something, and Evelyn seemed to relax momentarily. Oh, a shortcut. Okay, but it feels pretty remote out here. Another minute of silence, broken only by the intensifying rain and the tires struggling on what sounded like an unpaved road. I think I've changed my mind, Evelyn said, her voice now tinged with worry. I'd rather go back to the truck stop. I can refund your deposit. The man's response, though still faint, sounded polite, almost reassuring. Then the car stopped. Where are we? Evelyn asked, tension clear in her voice. This is a house in the middle of the wood? That's when the recording caught something that froze my blood. A rhythmic, almost metallic sound, like someone softly tapping their fingers on the steering wheel. Tap, 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 tap. Look, I really think we should go back. Evelyn's voice grew firmer, trying to mask her fear. I'm not comfortable here. The tapping stopped. An agonizing silence followed, And then a voice, not the driver's, but a faint female voice, seemingly from outside the car. "Run! Please, run!" A muffled scream from Evelyn. Sounds of the phone dropping. And then the recording cut off abruptly. Sarah and I sat in absolute silence when it ended, as if any sound might summon the horror we'd just witnessed. "I took this to the police this morning," Sarah said finally, silent tears streaming down her face. "You know what they told me? They can't confirm if the recording is authentic. They'll add it to the file." Something in her had shifted, grief giving way to anger. She looked at me with fierce determination. "There's one more thing," she continued, fumbling with the Evelyn had location tracking enabled. I managed to recover the data from the night she disappeared. Sarah showed me a map on the laptop. The last recorded location was an isolated spot, roughly 3 miles past the dirt road Malcolm had met. "I want you to go there," Sarah said. Her voice suddenly. "Find out what happened to my." The next morning, with the rain briefly letting up, I drove to the location from Evelyn's. I felt the weight of the responsibility Sarah had placed on me. This was no longer just a story. It was. The dirt road was in rough shape after the overnight storm, and my car struggled to. After about 2.5 miles, the road ended, giving way to a muddy trail through dense trees. Continued on foot, GPS in hand, following Evelyn's coordinates. After 20 minutes of walking, the forest opened to reveal a small valley, and there, nestled among the trees, was a. No map I'd checked mentioned a community in the. It was as if this place had been deliberately erased from all official records. Carefully, I examined the notebook. It contained detailed notes in precise, meticulous handwriting, dates, times, and descriptions. Clinical accounts of medical procedures that made me recoil in horror. Subject door 17. Red hair. Procedure. Began at 02:14. Significant initial resistance. Sedation increased. Unexpected allergic reaction caused complications. Procedure aborted at 03:47. Subject preserved for further analysis. The dates matched the women's disappearances, and beside each entry a small sample, a scrap of fabric, a lock of hair. I recognized the vibrant red of Evelyn's hair. The muffled sound came again, louder now. It was definitely coming from behind the locked door. I frantically searched for a way to open the padlock. In the table's drawers, I found disturbing items, syringes, vials of drugs, a set of surgical keys, and a small golden key. With trembling hands, I tried the key in the padlock. It didn't fit. I looked for something to pry the lock open. A metal rod in the corner caught my eye. That's when I heard another sound, not from below, but behind me. Footsteps. I spun around. The rod raised defensively, expecting to face the owner of this house of horrors. Instead, I saw a woman. Thin, pale, with matted blonde hair. She wore dirty, torn clothes. Her bare feet caked in mud. Her eyes held a terror beyond ordinary fear. The look of someone who'd seen things the human mind wasn't meant to process. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, her voice hoarse, as if unused for ages. "He'll be back soon." "Who'll be back?" I asked, slowly lowering the rod. "Who did this to you?" "Dr. Blackwood," she replied, her eyes darting to the window. "The last of his line. The villagers protect him. They're afraid of him, of what he can do." "You're one of the missing women," I said, recognizing her from a poster I'd seen. "Lily Montgomery. Vanished 8 months ago." She nodded faintly. Then her face twisted in panic. "He keeps the others down there," she said, pointing to the locked door. "The ones who survived the procedures." "What procedures? What's he doing?" Lily looked at me, her eyes locking onto mine as if trying to convey something words couldn't capture. "He believes he can transfer consciousness," she whispered, "from one body to another, preserve his own mind forever, jumping between hosts. The women are just vessels to him, disposable, replaceable." A chill ran down my spine. "How did you escape?" "I didn't," she replied, a sad smile forming on her cracked lips. "I'm his only successful experiment." Before I could process what that meant, Lily, or whoever was in her body, raised her hand. She held a phone. The screen showed an active call to emergency services. "I couldn't warn the others," she said, or he said, the voice shifting subtly. "But I can save you." At that moment, sirens began wailing in the distance. Confusion overwhelmed me. This didn't make sense. The police, who'd ignored all evidence for years, were coming now, called by someone claiming to be the perpetrator. "I don't understand," I stammered. "You're not meant to," Lily Blackwood replied. "Just know that not everyone in the police is part of the conspiracy of silence. Some still care about the truth." I hesitated, glancing at the locked door. There were survivors down there, people who needed help. "Go," the figure before me urged. "The right authorities will handle them. But you need to get out of here now. Take the notebook, take the evidence, tell our story." The sirens were closer. I made a split-second decision, grabbed the notebook, some of the samples, and my phone with the photos. "How can I trust you?" I asked, still unsure. "You can't," came the simple reply. "Just as I can't trust what's left of Lily in this shared mind. It's a constant battle. Sometimes she wins, sometimes I do. But today, we both want the same thing, for this to end." As I bolted out of the Blackwood mansion, I caught a glimpse of police cars climbing the hill. From a second-floor window, the figure of Lily Blackwood watched, an unreadable expression on its face. I escaped for 3 days. I didn't return to my apartment. I holed up in a small hotel outside Glasgow, constantly checking if I was being followed. Blackwood's notebook stayed with me at all times, along with a USB drive containing all the photos and a digitized copy of the gruesome notes. I didn't trust the authorities who showed up at the mansion, not after years of systematic neglect in the missing women's cases. Who could guarantee these were the right authorities Lily Blackwood had mentioned? Sarah Carter was the only person I shared my findings with. Sitting in my hotel room, she flipped through the notebook with trembling hands, horror dawning on her face as she read the clinical descriptions of the procedure performed on her sister. "This is unbelievable," she murmured. "Consciousness transfer. It's insanity." "It is," I agreed, "but it explains why no bodies were ever found. Blackwood preserves them for his experiments." Sarah slammed the notebook shut, unable to keep reading. What do we do now? That was the question tormenting me. I had evidence, but it was circumstantial. A notebook of bizarre notes, photos of an abandoned house, the testimony of a retired trucker, and an audio recording that cut off abruptly. Nothing that definitively proved crimes or pinned down a culprit. And then there was Lily Montgomery, a woman officially missing, now claiming to house 2 consciousnesses in her body. Who would believe that? "I have to go back," I decided finally. "I need concrete proof. Photos of the surviving victims, videos of the basement, something undeniable." Sarah stared at me like I'd lost my mind. "It's suicide," she argued. "If what you say about this conspiracy of silence is true, they already know who you are and what you found." She was right, but I saw no other way. The story had to be told. The women trapped in that basement needed to be freed. "I'm going tonight," I said. alone. Sarah tried to talk me out of it, but I was resolute. We agreed she'd be my safety contact. If she didn't hear from me by dawn, she'd send all the evidence to multiple news outlets simultaneously. As night fell, the sky filled with heavy clouds again. Another storm was coming. I thought of Malcolm's warning. Never go alone, and never, ever, on a rainy night. But it had to be tonight. Something told me the Blackwood mansion would be empty if I waited longer. I drove back roads, avoiding the main A74. When I reached the dirt road leading to the hill, I parked my car among dense trees, hiding it from view. I'd make the rest of the way on foot. The rain started light, but soon became the same impenetrable curtain I'd seen days before. I pulled on a black raincoat and pressed forward, flashlight in one hand, waterproof camera in the other. The village was silent as I skirted it, only a few windows glowing with candlelight or oil lamps. No sign of electricity, as if the place existed in another century. The climb to the Blackwood mansion was tougher this time, the ground slick with rain. When I finally reached the top, I paused to catch my breath and observe. The house looked the same, decaying, abandoned, menacing, but something was different. A faint flickering light came from a second-floor window. Someone was there. I circled the property like before, slipping through the same collapsed section of fence. The garden of mutilated statues looked even more sinister in the rain, the female figures seeming to plead for help. This time, I didn't enter through the side window. If someone was in the house, I needed to be more cautious. I found an entry through the cellar, a half-rotted door that gave way easily under my weight. The interior was pitch black, and I didn't dare use the flashlight yet. I moved slowly, guided only by the faint glow filtering from the upper floor through cracks in the wooden ceiling. The house groaned and creaked with the wind, sounds that could mask my presence, or someone else's. Every step was calculated, every breath controlled. Found the basement door in the same spot. The padlock that had secured it was gone. The door was simply closed, unlocked. An invitation, a trap. It didn't matter. I had to see what was down there. With utmost care, I turned the knob and opened the door. A putrid smell hit me immediately. A mix of hospital disinfectant, mold, and something primal my brain instinctively recognized as death. A steep staircase descended into darkness. I switched on the flashlight, keeping it aimed low to minimize the beam, and started down. The basement was far larger than I'd expect for a house of that era. Tunnels had been carved out, branching in multiple directions. Following the main one, I reached an area that looked like a hybrid of a lab and an operating room. A surgical table dominated the center, fitted with restraint strap. Surgical tools were neatly arranged on stainless steel tray. Obsolete medical machines from decades past cluttered one corner. But what stopped my breath were the walls. Every inch was covered with photographs. Women of all ages, races, and builds. Some I recognized from missing persons posters. Others were complete unknown. Each photo had a date and a number. Many were marked with a red X. With trembling hands, I started filming everything. I needed to document every detail, every tool, every photo. That's when I noticed the cells. Small cubicles lined one of the side tunnels, sealed with metal doors with tiny barred windows. I approached slowly, dreading what I'd find. They were empty. All 8 cells were clean, as if they'd never been occupied. No sign of the survivors Lily had mentioned. Confused, I returned to the main. Something was off. If there had been a police raid, there should have been crime scene tape, evidence being catalogued. This place looked hastily abandoned. I kept filming methodically, making sure to capture every detail. I found files with more notes, samples preserved in formaldehyde, and what looked like a personal diary. I opened the diary and recognized the same meticulous handwriting from the notebook The first entries dated back to 1970. My father's work can finally be completed. The opening, page read. After decades of preparation, I am ready to continue his experiments in consciousness transfer. I flipped through the diary quickly, snapping photos of random pages. The date of the last entry stunned. October 12th, 2013. The day Evelyn Carter disappeared. Suddenly, a sound above me made me freeze. Footsteps. Someone was walking on the ground floor, directly over. I switched off the flashlight and camera, plunging into near total dark. Only a faint greenish glow from one of the medical machines provided any. The footsteps continued, methodical, as if the person was searching for something or something. I backed into the tunnel with the cells, looking for a place to hide. Then the footsteps stopped, right above the basement. The silence that followed was more terrifying than any. I counted the seconds, waiting. 10, 20, 30. The basement door. A flashlight beam, far brighter than mine, swept down the stairs and began scanning the. I pressed myself against the wall of one of the cells, praying I wouldn't be. Footsteps descended the stairs. The person wasn't it. They weren't searching. They knew exactly what they were doing. The flashlight beam lit up the lab, lingering on the surgical tools, the photos on the walls, the open files on the. Then it started moving to. I held my breath, my heart pounding so loud I feared it could be. The light was nearing the tunnel with the cells. "Mr. Clark," a male voice called, calm and polite. "I know you're here. No need to." I recognized the voice, or at least its peculiar It was the same faint monotone voice from Evelyn's recording, every word carefully chosen and pronounced. "You're a persistent man," the voice continued. "I admire that. Curiosity is a rare and valuable." The flashlight beam lit up the tunnel entrance where I was hiding. "Your questions about the missing women are entirely justified. They deserve justice. They deserve to be found." A step. The light drew closer, "But I'm afraid you don't fully understand what's happening. The work I'm doing transcends simple concepts like justice or murder." The light stopped just 6 feet. "I'm offering immortality, Mr. Clark. The preservation of the human mind beyond the body's limitations. Think of the implications, all this." My right hand was in my pocket, clutching the small recorder I'd switched on the moment I heard the first foot. "The women are just the beginning," the voice went on. "Temporary vessels while I perfect the process. Soon I'll be able to transfer consciousnesses into any host at any time. The end of death." The light finally found me, blinding me momentarily. As my eyes adjusted, I saw the figure behind the flashlight. A tall, thin man, maybe 60, with neatly combed grey hair, wearing an old-fashioned but elegant. His face had an odd, almost artificial quality, like a perfectly crafted mask. "Dr. Blackwood, I presume," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The man smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. Empty eyes that matched Malcolm's description exactly. "One of many," he replied cryptically. "The name persists through generations, as do I." Slowly, I stepped out of hiding, keeping my eyes locked on him, scanning for a weapon. I saw none, but something in his posture told me he didn't need one. "The women in the photos," I began, stalling for. time as I assessed escape options. What happened to them? Some had the honor of becoming part of the experiment. Others, unfortunately, were incompatible. He spoke like a professor discussing a theoretical problem, not someone confessing to multiple murders. And the survivors in the cells? Relocated, he said simply. After your last visit and the untimely interference of the authorities, I had to expedite certain plans. I noticed he was inching closer, closing the gap between us with almost imperceptible steps. So, Lily Montgomery, I started. A partial success, he interrupted. The transfer worked, but the original consciousness persisted. An interesting complication, but ultimately counterproductive. He tilted his head slightly. She helped you, didn't she? Fascinating how, even in her fragmented mental state, she managed to manipulate the situation. My mind raced, searching for a way out. The tunnel ended in a dead end behind me. The only escape was past Blackwood. Why are you telling me all this? I asked. Aren't you afraid I'll expose your crimes? Blackwood smiled again. That same hollow smile that didn't touch the rest of his face. Who would believe you? A mad scientist conducting consciousness transfer experiments in an abandoned mansion, protected by a conspiracy of silence involving isolated villagers and corrupt authority? He shook his head, almost pityingly. Even with your evidence, you'd be seen as chasing a common serial killer at best. The true nature of my work would be dismissed as delusion. He took another step toward me. Besides, I have no intention of letting you leave here, Mr. Clark. That's when I made my move. In a sudden motion, I hurled my flashlight at his face and dove to the side, trying to slip past. Blackwood reacted with startling speed for his age, lunging to grab me. His fingers grazed my jacket, but couldn't hold on. I sprinted through the lab, knocking over equipment behind me to slow him down. The darkness was both my ally and my enemy, hiding me but making escape harder. I reached the stairs and bolted up, taking two at a time. Behind me, I heard Blackwood moving with unsettling calm, as if certain I couldn't get away. Your curiosity brought you here, Mr. Clark. His voice echoed from the basement. But it'll be your fear that makes you an excellent subject for my next experiment. Bursting onto the first floor, I ran for the front door. Locked. I tried a nearby window, also locked. The house that had seemed so easy to break into now felt like a sealed tomb. Blackwood's footsteps on the stairs grew close. I frantically searched for another way out. I spotted a partially open door at the end of the hall. I dashed to it, finding a small light. The room's only window looked acceptable. I tried to open it, but it was... Grabbing a heavy bronze candlestick, I smashed the glass. The sound felt deafening in the house's silence. As I cleared the shards, I heard Blackwood enter the room behind me. Persistent, he remarked. That quality will be preserved in the trance. I didn't look. I scrambled through the window, slicing my arm on the remaining glass. The pain barely registered in my panic-driven mind. I landed awkwardly in the flower bed below, the rain now falling in sheets. I got up and sprinted toward the forest, knowing my only chance was the darkness and the terrain I'd already navigated. I didn't head toward the... Instead, I slid down the opposite slope, slipping in the mud, using trees for support. Behind me, I heard no pursuit, just the steady sound of... That, somehow, was even more terrifying. Blackwood didn't seem in a hurry, as if he knew exactly where to find me eventually. After what felt like an eternity, I reached my hidden... My hands shook so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life, and I sped down the dirt road, mud flying. In the rearview mirror, I thought I saw a silhouette standing in the rain, watching me. But when I looked again, I didn't head straight to Glasgow or the hotel where Sarah was waiting. I drove for hours, taking random routes, constantly checking for Finally, as the sun began to rise, I pulled into a roadside diner far from the A7. My hands were still shaking when I called Sarah. "Did you get it?" she asked immediately. "Yeah," I replied, glancing at my camera and recorder. "I've got everything. Photos, videos, a recorded confession. Enough to spark an investigation, not even the conspirators." The silence on the other end lasted too long. "Sarah, you need to come back now," she said finally, her voice odd. "We need to turn this over to the authorities right away." Something in her tone made me... "I didn't tell you which diner I'm at," I said. Another pause. "Thomas." The voice was no longer Sarah's. The inflection, the rhythm, it was the same monotone, artificial voice that had chased me through the mansions. "We have much to discuss about your future role in..." I hung up, horror and realization hitting me at once. Sarah, what had he done? I started the car and peeled out of the parking lot. I had nowhere to go, no one to trust. How long had Blackwood been monitoring my communications? How much did he know about my investment? And who else might be under his control? That was 3 months. Since then, I've been on the move, never staying more than a few nights in one. The evidence I collected is safe, stored in multiple locations with instructions to release it if anything happens. I've reached out to journalists, retired detectives, anyone who might help expose. Some listened, most dismissed me as a deranged conspiracy. A small investigation into the A74 disappearances was opened, but it's yielded no significant finding. The Blackwood mansion, when searched, was complete. The basement lab, gone, as if it never... Sarah Carter was found dead in her apartment 2 weeks after that final call. Suicide, according to the official. But I know the truth. As for Malcolm Peterson, the retired trucker who first told me about the black car, he vanished from the nursing home. The staff member I spoke to when I went back swore no one by that name had ever been. I'm sharing this story now because I feel like I'm being watched again. Black cars parked across the street. Silent calls in the middle of the night. The persistent sense of eyes. The rain started falling as I recorded this account. Heavy, relentless, just like that night on the A74. If you're watching this, it means my suspicions were right, that I didn't escape whatever's hunting me. But it also means the truth is finally... Check the data I've provided. Look for patterns in the disappearances along the A74. Question the official silence. And above all, ever driving that highway during a storm and see a black car parked on the shoulder, don't stop. Don't look, just drive. Because some stories aren't just stories. Some monsters aren't just legends. And if you're watching this video alone, late at night, with the rain tapping at your window, are you sure it's really just the rain? Are you certain you're the only one in the room right now? Look at the darkest corner of your room. Did that shadow move? If you think this story is just fiction, it might be better for your sanity to keep believing that. But if something in you recognizes the truth in what I've shared, do yourself a favor. Subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications, and stay alert. Because if something happens to me, this will be the first place the full truth is revealed. And remember, some highways have tolls that go far beyond money. The A74 collects in lives, in souls. And now, it knows your name too.